episode 133 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary with Catherine
and Kristen, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hi, Catherine.
Hey, Kristen.
So we thought we'd talk about something interesting this week. So, Catherine, I don't know, maybe you should introduce this because this was your idea.
Yeah, I guess before the summer, we kind of talked about what we wanted to do and read over the summer in one of our intros and like the vibe we were going for certain books if we wanted to read them, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So I figured we could do like a follow-up and say what we did or didn't read. For me, it's mostly didn't.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. So yeah, I guess the main thing I said, I think, was that I wanted to read Powerless, and I didn't.
That's true.
And then I also was like, I'm going to go by vibes. And I guess my vibes weren't reading vibes this summer. I don't think I may have read like 2 books this whole summer. And one was last week.
Were the 2 books the books we had to do for the podcast over the summer?
No. Yes, but no, I think I read 2 other than that. Maybe. I can't even think of another one I finished. I read one book last week from Libby, the library app, and I started, and I'm reading, is it Blackbird and Butcher? Anyway, those are the nicknames in it, but I'm reading that book now, and I don't know, the physical book isn't doing it for me, and I don't know why, because I'm like, not taking it with me, I guess, is the issue. It's just so much easier when it's on your phone, and like, if it's a story I'm into. So, I don't know what that means for me, but reading was a struggle. How did you read over the summer?
So, I read a lot. I think I totaled it up the other day, and I think it was around 36 books.
Wow.
Yeah. So like, I read a ton.
Mm-hmm.
My issue is that a lot of the reading was, again, like you, I did a lot of Kindle Unlimited reading.
Mm-hmm.
And a part of me feels like I have to justify the subscription, so I have to read so many books on the app to justify having the subscription. And I do get a ton of use out of it. But it's just the same thing, like, I don't know, there's just this feeling of, going to my bookshelf, and, like, I have so many physical books that I have not yet read that I have on my shelf. It almost feels daunting to have to make a choice, which is bizarre considering I then go on Kindle Unlimited where there's thousands of books and I make a choice.
Yeah.
So it sounds very, I don't know, it just sounds like, what's that word? Hypocritical.
Yeah.
That I can make a choice on my phone, but I can't make a choice of a physical book. Now, I did read a few physical books, but, like, I wanted to read A Fate Inked in Blood. I wanted to read Throne of the Fallen, which is, like, the next series in this series. I have so many books over there. Oh, One Dark Window I wanted to read, like, and I didn't touch any of them. I did a lot of rereading, like...
Oh, yeah.
So, and I count those. I'm sorry.
Oh, me too.
If you're one of those people that don't count rereads, I'm sorry. I do. If I read a book more than once, I'm counting it again. Because I'm still taking the time to read it. But, like, if I'm in the mood for something, a lot of times, instead of looking for a new book that will give me that feeling, I know what books I've read before gave me that feeling, so I just go back to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, I sort of felt like I'm happy with myself because I read 36 books, and that's, like, a good chunk of my yearly goal. Mm-hmm. My yearly goal is not a lot. It's only, like, 75. Mm-hmm. So, I got a good chunk of my reading goal done. But at the same time, like, I wish I'd focused more on the books that I have on my shelf. Because I had this thought in my head of, like, sitting on my deck with a book and a drink, and the reality didn't come to that. Now, I'm blaming it on the fact that I'm doing my master's, and so, like, a lot of my summer was spent in front of a computer.
Yeah.
So next summer, I'm already looking to next summer, which is bad.
Yeah.
But next summer, I won't be doing my master's anymore. I'm finished in April. So I'm hoping that next summer I'll sort of get more of those vibes that I wanted.
Yeah. That's fair. I'm kind of similar, I guess, because I spent a lot of this summer rowing and swimming. So it was much busier summer than most summers. So I really didn't read as much as I wanted to.
Well, for our listeners, Catherine just swam an open ocean a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
An open ocean, how many kilometers?
5K.
A 5K open ocean. She could have been eaten by a shark.
And it would have been poetic.
She could have been swallowed by a whale.
It's true. There was a whale nearby.
Yes,
I'll tell you that after.
You did.
No,
but
thank you.
Yeah, like, she got touched by jellyfish. She was in, like, legit, like, deep ocean.
Yeah.
And swam 5 kilometers.
It just looks green. It's just green everywhere.
But, like, not being able to see... Okay, I'm obsessed with the ocean, right? I love ocean life.
Yeah.
I love ocean life. Orcas are my favorite animal. But I would literally be petrified of being in open water where I can't see the bottom.
It is, yeah. It is terrifying.
I legit think I would have a panic attack.
Yeah. And it's funny because the swim is like for mental health awareness and like raise money for mental health. And you're doing it and you're like, this is harming my mental health. It's so funny. But it's cool-ish.
So yeah.
And you have a kayaker, so you're not complete, like,
you're not alone.
Kayaked for me.
Yeah.
So I saw him, could see him the whole time. And I think 11 other people did it, so like it's a thing here. It's not like I just jumped in the ocean and swam 5K.
But you could. You've trained so hard. Theoretically, you could do that.
Yeah. I think that'd be scarier, because my thought process was...
We're all in this together.
Well, also, like, the big animals, like, well, there's so many targets. Why would they pick me?
Good point. Yeah, no. That's a valid...
And also, there's, like, so many of us, and there were boats around. I figured we'd scare them off. Yeah. Most of them. And then we're back to point one. Why would they choose me out of all the targets?
How are your kicks? Because they'll go for whoever's got the biggest, loudest kicks, right? Because they'll be like, ooh, who's making all that noise?
Yeah.
So as
my
long
kicks are probably louder than most, because generally in swimming, like, men kick less and women kick more. So.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's based because, like, normally women have more, I guess, body fat on their lower half, their hips and stuff. So their legs usually float better than men.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that bad? You don't want to float, or you do want to float?
No, it's good, because if your legs are too muscly, they sink, and then it's hard to keep them up. Like, you're using a lot of your energy to keep them up.
Right.
So then it's hard to also kick too. So if you have
being
your legs,
fat is beneficial.
Yeah.
Great. This is good for me.
Good content for everybody. Yeah. I guess that's all we really had to say about summer. We could talk about fall next week, maybe. See if we have any spooky goals.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So yeah, just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone, and things might get saucy. They kind of do.
They kind of do. Can I be honest, though, and say that the spice level in this book, it's better in the next book.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Well, there's obviously more spice in this book than the first book, which had 0. Well, except for that one scene with, like, the invisible hands.
I don't remember that.
Lust, when she met Lust.
Yes!
And she, like,
yeah. Yeah. Didn't her and Wrath, like, start getting hot and heavy somewhere?
Against a wall.
In the first book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he was like, I'm going out. Goodbye. If
right.
You, and then he was like, there's a present in the bedside table, and I thought it was going to be a vibrator.
Oh, and that's when he gave her the confusing ring.
Yeah. Which she still wears.
Yeah, it comes up in my section.
So funny. Oh, God. Yeah, so this is our second week with Kingdom of the Cursed, and we're doing chapters 8 to 15. So last week was just the beginning of the book, which picked up at the end of Kingdom of the Wicked, basically. Why do I forget her name? Emilia. We don't get her name a lot.
Can I be honest and say that when we start, so like, I did not read Kingdom of the Wicked before reading this again for like this month, right? I just was like, read Kingdom of the Wicked a couple times, I'll just pick up book 2. Yeah. I had forgotten her name until they gave it to me in the chapter. I was like, what is her name? I could not remember.
I know, I was taking notes and I was like, it is Emilia, right? I was like second guessing myself. But yeah, so Emilia and Wrath end up in hell. They're descending there. She gets hypothermia for some reason. Plot. He helps her. And I gotta say, that's like...
I mean, we know why she gets hypothermia, because she's wearing nothing trucking through the...
Metal.
Yeah, she's wearing a metal corset trucking through a winter storm. And, like, little ballet flats.
Yeah.
So, like, we know why she gets hypothermia. We just don't know why it was... Wrath allowed it to happen, because he knows what hypothermia is, yet he doesn't realize that he should carry a cloak or a blanket or something so that she doesn't get it.
Yeah, it's not very smart. And I gotta say, it is one of my favorite tropes, I guess, is when, like, someone's sick and someone's nursing them back together to health, and they're like, it's one of my favorites.
I don't hate it. I don't like it in this context. I like it in other moments of the story. I don't like it here solely because I think he should have planned better.
Oh, yeah. I think it was stupid. But, and like, it wasn't as satisfying in this book, but it did hook me in when I finally got to that part. Because, like I said last week, I've tried starting this book a few times. And I couldn't get into it. But, like, that part, I was like, okay, I'll stay around for a bit longer. This is interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't as much as I wanted. I don't know what I wanted from it, but I don't know. Yeah, so she's currently in Wrath's kingdom. She's waiting to hear from Pride to go meet him because she's betrothed to him. And she's kind of exploring, I guess. So she found a library and she's come up with some theories. She realizes she doesn't really know a lot about the princes, and her Nona didn't teach her enough about that or about magic in general. So she is also like, she borrowed a grimoire and is trying to teach herself some more magic stuff. And she also, I guess, is going to a dinner. Oh, and then this whole, like, feast thing that we heard about, that she's going to have to, like, give up her biggest secret thing.
Yeah, she's, like, the guest of honor at a feast, and part of the ritual is that she has to divulge one of her deepest secrets.
Yeah.
And she doesn't want to. But, like... Of course. But I'm sorry. I don't mean this in a jackass way. What is her deepest secret? That she wants revenge against the person who murdered her sister? Pretty sure everyone knows that.
Yeah.
Is it that she is hot for Wrath? Pretty sure people know that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand why she's so hesitant when she is an open book. Everyone already knows her shit.
Yeah. And it's either, I think they said last week, it's either your deepest secret or your biggest fear. So, like, obviously she'd go with her secret because her fear, like, if she gives up her greatest fear, people will just torture her with it.
But at the same time, is it a choice?
Well, I don't know. That's the thing.
Like, is this a ritual, like, will they just cast magic and will it just bubble out of her without her consent?
Mm-hmm. Also, I wouldn't even be able to imagine what my biggest fear is. I don't know. Is that a failing on my part? I mean, do you know what your biggest fear is?
I got a lot of fears.
I do too.
I have so many. It'd be hard to pick one.
Yeah. Like the sharks eating me? That's a fear.
Yeah. I actually do think I could pick my biggest one.
Yeah.
And it's probably just like dying before my kids are adults.
Yeah. Like, I feel like mine's something similar in that it really, like, how are you going to torture me with the impending death of myself or family members or people I love? Like,
yeah, like how you can't prolong that torture. You either kill them or you don't.
yeah, it's kind of like if you've read Harry Potter, Molly Weasley's Bogart, is that what they're called?
Yeah.
The fear thing. It cycles through her dead family members.
Yes.
And that's like the manifestation of her fear. I think, yeah, mine would be that, but like, yeah. I just feel like it's kind of generic. Most people are afraid of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now, like, I'm not crazy about being buried alive.
Yeah. But I feel like that's like a kind of standard thing too. I don't think anybody really wants to be buried alive. But it feels like those are things that people know that mortals are afraid of.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, you don't need to figure out her biggest fear. You could just bury her alive. Like, yeah. I don't know. I feel like I'd be like, yeah, take my biggest secret, take my biggest fear. I'd be interested to know what they are too.
Yeah, just take one.
Yeah, I don't know what my biggest secret is either. Anyway, fun times. Hopefully we do get that scene and we figure some stuff out. But.
Yeah.
So we jump back into the book, and Emilia's getting ready for supper, where she's meeting Wrath's court. And Wrath sent her a letter that said that she should wear something fierce and formal. So she's in like a blood red gothic gown that shows off her tattoo and Wrath's ring. And she puts her hair up with like little bones and flowers that she found in her hair stuff.
Adorable.
And it kind of looks like a crown, she says. And I love it.
Sort of reminds me of like a Persephone sort of a thing, right? Like she's been taken from her world and brought to the underworld, and like she is vibrant and alive, and she's like engaged to the devil.
Mm-hmm.
And like the whole thing with Persephone and Hades is like it is the bones and flowers, right? Because he's death and she's spring. So like I'm seeing a connection there.
Yeah, definitely got the vibes. I like it. So another thing I guess that happened last week is a skull just appeared in her room and spoke to her, and now there's another one.
So like I wonder, is somebody like sneaking into her room and putting it there, or is it being magicked there?
I hope it's being magicked there, because if someone's sneaking in and she's this oblivious,
yes,
like, that's not good. So we have to assume it's magicked in. She can't be that oblivious, can she? Like she's on her toes, isn't she?
Is she?
Wait.
Is she?
No. She's trying to be. She's doing her best. So this skull says 7 stars, 7 sins, as above, so below. And she last week stole some parchment and ink and stuff from the library. So she like writes everything out. And she's kind of made an assumption that it's another prince that's sending her these skulls, which I think is interesting. Like, I guess, like, who else would it be? But I don't think I would jump to, it's another prince, but who knows?
But she thinks she's so, like, self-important. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. But she thinks that all the other princes are aware that she's here. And, like, she thinks that they will have, or from what I get, anyway, when I read it, it seems like she assumes that because she's going to marry the devil and become queen of all 7 sins, that they'll have this, like, respect and reverence for her. And they just don't.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like she feels so much more self-important than she is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, like, she thinks it's, a prince sending it to her because who else would be communicating with the future queen? like, girl,
Yeah.
it could be anybody.
Exactly. She does think that it could also just be someone screwing with her. So, like, but
So it could be a prince, but it could be anybody else.
yeah, it's kind of what she says. So she thinks 7 sins is easy. It's talking about the princes and their sins, and as above, so below is part of the prophecy. But she's not sure how that really connects. So she thinks about what she knows about the prophecy, and it's like peace to both realms through great sacrifice. So she writes out whatever. So we kind of get a bit of, because we kind of talked about it last week. We don't really remember what the prophecy was. But what she remembers is twins signal the end of the devil's curse, and they wear the devil's horn. And some think it means, like, there's so much interpretation of this that we talked about in the last book, but some think it means that, like one twin will be light, one dark, or the prophecy could mean a prince will fall in love with a witch, or it'll mean that one of the twins will rule in hell and one will rule in heaven. So there's just, like, a lot of interpretation, and we don't really know what it means. She also thinks of, like, when Claudia scried and kind of went a bit mad from it, she thinks of what she was saying, because she said the devil is free, and she thinks that based on what she remembers of the prophecy, their birth is what broke the curse. So the devil has been free since they were born, and it really doesn't have anything to do with her marriage contract, which is what she thought, like, he'd be free after they got married. So, like, that's different than what we've kind of been thinking. So then she's like, so why did Pride send Wrath to investigate the killings of the witches if it wasn't to get a bride for him?
There's just I find I really like this series. Mm-hmm. However, I'm so overwhelmed with everything going on.
Yeah.
Because we have a prophecy, like, foretelling that, like, this whole thing with the twins, they signal, like, the end of days or something like that, or, like, the end of how things have been, and, like, one's light and one's dark, and, like, all that stuff. But then there's also, like, a curse with multiple aspects to it. Then there's, like, demons are getting out of the thing, and mm-hmm. like what the devil's horns are, like the horn of Hades, like what that is, and like the princes having something taken from them, and like that part mm-hmm. at the very beginning of the book when that witch curses the guy and takes his wings. Like, I don't understand how the prophecy and all these aspects of the curse, like, why does Pride even need a bride? Like, why were brides being murdered? What does that have to do with any of it? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe it's just that we don't have the answers for it yet, but it just seems like we've got, like, 3 different problems happening at once, and I can't keep straight what like, I know what she's working on. She just wants to find Victoria's killer, but, like, mm-hmm. it's really hard to keep it all straight.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And, like, I'm the same way, because I'm like, I haven't read it, so I don't really even know what's important. Like, I remember when I read the first book, Kingdom of the Wicked, and, like, even the Claudia part, I was like, I'm assuming all this shit is important that she's saying. I'm assuming it's going to come back. But it doesn't come back in that book, so it ties into this book. And, like, it does feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
But I guess the good thing about it is that it's probably a series that, like, you can reread and get things out of each time.
Yeah. Actually, I was thinking, just saying all of this series would actually probably be a really good one to annotate. Because then you could, like, highlight or note when certain things were being discussed, and then you could, like, mm-hmm. go back and see and maybe get a clearer picture of each individual thing.
Yeah. I think the issue that I kind of am, like, butting up against is that obviously the narrator also doesn't know what's going on. So that makes it hard because she's coming up with theories, which is just adding extra stuff.
Yeah.
And like her theories are either going to be right, which seems so unlikely and isn't what would actually happen, or they're going to be wrong and it's just adding more information that we don't actually need. So I'm kind of struggling with that. I'm like, is the author just going to make her figure stuff out easily and then we're only going to have the correct information, or are there like red herrings around here? Like, I'm like, what is happening? So it's confusing and it's overwhelming, but I do think it would be a good book to like read multiple times and definitely figure stuff out. Emilia decides then that she's going to steal the journal on Pride. So she, in the library last week, found 7 journals. An 8th one was missing. And the Pride journal, well, all the journals are in a different language, but she wants Pride because that's who her husband is. So she wants more information. So she goes to steal it, even though she can't read it, and she hides it and the skulls in her wardrobe. And someone knocks on her door. So she opens it, and it's Fauna, who I called Forna last book. Oops.
Yeah.
Last week, not last book. And she's there because she said that she would come meet her before supper, basically.
Right.
Which is like, I don't know why, I guess. I'm like,
I guess the way I took her character was that she seems to like just want a companion.
Yeah.
Like,
maybe.
Seems like she just wants to make a friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's funny because even in this moment, Emilia thinks that like maybe she could make a deal with Fauna and get her to read the journal. But she also isn't like, she's not ready to put her trust in her yet. She doesn't know her intentions, kind of thing, which is smart. She also thinks she doesn't know how Wrath is going to react tonight. And she asks Fona if he'll be attending. And he responds, yes, because he's standing right behind them. And so she turns around and looks at him, and he's super hot, and she's super hot, and they're both hot and looking at each other, and the tension is, like, unbearable.
Of course.
And Fauna, like, curtsies to Wrath, which is, you know, he's reminding us of his, like, stature in this house that Emilia just gives 0 fucks about. And Wrath just tells her to leave. He's just like, get out of here. Which I'm like, oh, okay. And she does. We're cool. And Emilia looks at Wrath and thinks that he's fighting wrath, greed, and lust while he's looking at her. And I'm like, how can she tell that? But fine. And I'm just like, is he being tested too by the sins? Like, is
but
that
I feel
what
like the testing is over.
Yeah.
She's not in the same corridor anymore, so she's not. I want to know who gets the results. Like, yeah. Is it gonna show up to the devil on paper? Like, is it just supposed to be something intrinsic she knows about? Like,
yeah. Is it like when you're at the end of the corridor, you like walk through a door and then you're in the court that you tested for?
Well, I mean, if that's the case, then she's shit out of luck because Wrath, like, sort of carried her to his realm anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. We all know she's in House Wrath. Like, we all know the sin that she's most aligned to is Wrath. Like, I feel like there's, even though we don't know, that's the way the story's gonna go.
So yeah, there's obviously like so much tension. She thinks it feels like a storm, and he like tells her she looks beautiful. Well, he tells her she looks like a beautiful cataclysm. I just love when people make like, I don't know, make up things to like,
I know,
like a beautiful disaster, like you know, I like it. So she spins for him, and like the dress like dips super low in the back, and she hears his breath, like his intake of breath at seeing it. So like he's super turned on. And she feels powerful, and she knows like she's going to command attention in this dress, which like is what she wants. And thinks like she's not going to cower and she can't be weak. So he moves her hair to one side and puts a necklace around her neck, and he trails a finger like down her spine, which is hot. And the necklace he put on her is actually her cornicello, which we know is one of the devil's horns, which is interesting because we don't really know what they are. And she's like, won't you be in trouble for giving this to me? And he's like, how would I get in trouble? So it's just, she's worried about him, which is sweet, I guess. So he realizes, obviously, that she's worried about him. And he's like, so tell me you hate me and that you don't want to kiss me. And she says she doesn't want to kiss him, but, like, he can tell that she's lying, of course. So he moves to her and he calls her a liar and then he kisses her. And at first it's, like, super sweet, but then it gets, like, hot and heavy real fast. He, like, pins her arms above her head, and she thinks, like, she hates that the sins are making her do this.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. But she also thinks, like, it doesn't matter. She does pull away at one point and ask if this is real, because obviously she had that fantasy dream a few times, which is just kind of funny. And he, like, rolls his hips against her, and she can feel how much he wants her. And she's like, yep, it's real. So she pulls him back, and, like, she thinks she wants him to take her right there. And he pulls back and says she might destroy him, which I love. And she says she will sooner if he doesn't kiss her again. And then he, like, touches the mark on her neck, and it makes her think of her nonna and of her not liking that she had that mark. So she kind of, like, starts to tunnel into herself, and she's thinking about that, and he can feel the shift and that she's not into it anymore. So he pulls away, which, you know, we love. And she asks why, and he says that he doesn't think she wants people to watch. And she has, like, a vivid thought of him taking her on the supper table in front of everyone. And I'm like, that's a leap. But she says she was asking why he marked her, not why he's, like, stopping or why he was kissing her. And he just tells her that they need to go because it's time for supper. And there's an odd feeling in her chest on the way down, and her cornicello starts to glow. And Wrath is just like, we can just introduce you and leave if you're, like, feeling nervous and stuff. But she just says, like, she isn't nervous. And she touches her cornicello, and it shocks her. And he tells her to tell him if she's feeling anything odd at all. And she's about to, but then she's like, no, it must just be nerves. It's definitely not actually something. And you're like, of course it's something. Then she, like, thinks of the kiss and how Pride is going to be angry because obviously she's kissing his brother. And she's like, it makes sense that I'm nervous. That's definitely what this feeling is. He asks if she's ready. And she nods, and he, like, turns and just kicks the door in, which is just, like, so intense and seems kind of out of character. You're like, why are you doing this? Everybody in there drops to their knees for him, and he tells them to rise and bid Her Highness Emilia de Carlo, their future queen, welcome. And they must address her as Her Highness or Lady. And any insults answer to him. Ooh. So he's, like, setting the tone.
Yeah.
They go to, like, head seats, and the way it's kind of described, it kind of reminds me of, like, a wedding reception when, like, the bride and groom have, like, their chairs in the middle, and then there's some people next to them, and then there's other tables with other people. I don't know if that's exactly what it meant, but that's kind of what it sounded like.
Yeah.
So Wrath, like, pulls out her seat for her. And I guess nobody is sitting yet, and she goes to ask why, which is just stupid. Like, obviously they're not going to sit until Wrath tells them they can. Like, but she's about to ask Wrath why, but gets lost in his eyes. And she, like, thinks of them together, and she knows it's like a weakness in her that she's like so attracted to him and wants him so badly. I wonder if, like, we're assuming that all of the brothers are hot, right? Like,
oh yeah, come on,
all the princes are hot.
Come on.
Like, it'd be really shitty if you're this attracted to Wrath and then you meet Pride and you're like, God damn it, he's not even attractive.
The only one I could see not being handsome is maybe like Sloth.
Yeah. He'd be cute though.
It depends on how they portray like slothliness.
Yeah.
Like, are they portraying it? Because I'm thinking of it. A lot of people aren't going to understand the reference, but okay. Remember that Supernatural episode where the four horsemen like land and they show up in this town and like everybody's dead, and like they go into a house and there are people sitting on the couch and they just died from sitting on the couch. They just wouldn't move. Like, I wonder if they're going to portray it like that, like somebody who's so like slovenly, they're just like, they don't do anything, or is it not like that?
Yeah, and I was kind of like wondering, is it like they're not gonna shower, they're not gonna, like, that kind of stuff, like not gonna take care of, like, never get a haircut, never wash their face, like,
is it gonna be like that, or is it, I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. But I'm assuming that Pride is going to be the most handsome because he takes pride in his looks.
Yeah, but there's also, like, it depends on what you're attracted to, because, like, movie boy handsome versus, like, rugged man, I would take the rugged man over pretty boy.
Yeah. I feel like he's going to be 100% a pretty boy.
Yeah.
Like, he does his eyebrows every day and, like...
Yep. So
I probably wouldn't say no to him.
No, I probably would. If he approached me and I didn't have any other entanglements, I would also probably wouldn't turn him away. But, like, if I had to pick between brothers and I got to pick between pretty boy and, like, rugged man, I'm gonna go rugged man.
Yeah, agreed. Anyway, that was a spin we took. So she's shuffling around and Wrath just tells her, like, one word and he'll send everyone away. And she asks if she seems that nervous, but he just says that's not what he seems. And she realizes at this point that he can sense her arousal.
Oh my God, we got another. They can always sense their arousal. Always.
I hate it.
Always.
So yeah.
I wonder how he does it, because obviously it's not a smell thing like it is with the Fae. He can't. No. He's not scenting it. He's not smelling her. See, this is why I don't like the scenting arousal, because in my mind, it's not like a thing that's coming off. It's like you can smell you're down there.
Yep.
And the. Oh, I don't want to say the word.
Moist?
Yes, the moistness that is happening. So, in my head, that's what scenting your arousal is, which makes it almost, like, all the more embarrassing.
Yeah.
But, like,
But, how would you scent it on a man?
Pre-cum.
Yeah, but, like, what if you're not that much?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, for men, it's just, you can just look down.
Look at them.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be that it's like the pheromones they're putting off are.
Oh.
But I immediately think, bleh.
Yeah.
He can scent.
Yeah.
But I think it's just like
Wrath is not scenting it.
No.
He's just sensing it, which is different.
Yeah, because he can sense her emotions.
Do we know why that is? Is it just an aspect of his magic?
I think it's just an aspect of his magic. Like, he can tell when she's lying. He can sense her emotions. Because she was like, I'm going to think about happy things. And he won't realize that I'm wrathful. So I think he can just sense emotions. But, like, I don't think it's explicitly said that he can. But in this situation, we realize that he can sense that she's aroused. Right. We're like, good. She asks if he can sense the knife she's considering stabbing him with, which I love. I don't know why. And he says that he's actually a fan of knife play. So I was like, oh, this is getting into like NA book territory. This is not YA anymore. Not that I don't think that we're going to get that in the book. And if we do, I'll be pleasantly surprised. But
I don't think it's going to go that deep.
Yeah. So he just drinks his wine and he tells everybody to sit. He is stroking her leg while they're sitting next to each other, which I just love. I love casually touching. And someone says it's a pleasure to meet her and compliments her on her beauty, and Wrath's hand tenses on her, and so she asks who it is, and it's Lord Baylor Macadon. So it's the guy that Wrath threatened to cut his tongue out. Wrath serves her food, and people are noticing it because it's out of character. We're kind of getting the implication of. And she realizes that Wrath is really putting on a show for everybody. So she kind of plays along with it and is cool.
Yeah.
So she's kind of talking to the noble next to her, and she's enjoying her food, and she's thinking of how she'd make little changes to the food, because that's a big thing from the first book was her recipes and stuff
that she just forgot about for the last half of that book, and this is the first thing we're hearing of it now in this book, and we're nearing the halfway point, I guess.
Yeah. But it also seems like she just didn't eat in this book until this point. Yeah. She had one meal with Anir. So yeah, she's thinking of how she kind of wants to go down into the kitchen. Down, I don't know where the kitchen is. Maybe the kitchen's up. She wants to go to the kitchen at some point, which I think would be an interesting scene. And I wonder all of these demons seem very people-like. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't we're she's the only mortal. Everybody else is not. And I'm they all seem like they're people.
Yeah, but I also think that the perception of hell is different. I think what the author wanted us to believe in and what the people believe in when it comes to what hell is different than the reality. I don't think of it as actual hell. I think of it more as an alternate dimension.
Okay. Yeah. So the noble next to her asks if she's met anyone, and she says Fauna, and the noble person next to her kind of gives off the impression that she doesn't think much of Fauna, which I'm why? But okay. And she looks for Fauna, and she's actually at the end of the table next to Anir. And she thinks that, that's shitty because, they're the two people she kind of knows. Yeah. But it makes me wonder if she's with Anir. If, her and Anir are lovers in the night. And the day. But
I can't say anything.
I figured. So then Macadon asks if she's had demon fare before because she looks in the throes of ecstasy. And he says he's envious of her fork. And I'm why? Why? Just fuck off. Why are you saying these things? And she's just if he's so preoccupied with other people's mouths, he should consider aligning with a different house.
Which one?
And I'm guessing Lust?
Well, I guess, yeah.
That's all I could really think. And she's kind of debates maiming him in this moment because he's pissing her off. And obviously.
He's just being a douche.
Oh, 100%.
And he's asking for Wrath to hurt him.
Lose his shit, yeah.
There can't be another explanation. He must be Wrath literally invited her in, told everyone to call her either Her Highness or Lady, is serving her food to show deference and respect, and Macadon is still I'm gonna make lewd comments.
It just doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. He has a death wish.
Yeah. So he says that he's been told not to speak about her mouth, but since she's enjoying the meat so much, he wonders if her perfect little mouth has tasted cock. And he offers to prepare it for her himself tonight. And, like, I read this and completely forgot that chicken was a thing. I was like, what the fuck is he saying?
I totally assumed he was talking about his penis. I didn't go to chicken at all.
No, me neither.
I think, is it referenced that he's referring to chicken?
I think she thinks that he's using wordplay on chicken. She thinks that herself. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, no, I did not go there. I was like, that asshole wants her to suck his cock.
And he does, yeah. That's what he's saying. But he's trying to, like, I don't know.
He's trying to be polite about it and be like, I mean chicken. It's like when the kids say the word seal in French in class, and they're like, oh, I wasn't cursing.
I was saying seal. Yeah. Why do you need to say seal so much? Mm-hmm. So yeah, he's obviously being an idiot, but it just shocked me. I was like, why would you say that in front of all of these people? Like, why? The audacity.
Yeah.
Ugh. So she stands up and she, like, lifts her dinner, like, her supper knife, like, that she used to cut up meat. And she's like, I'm gonna fucking kill him. And then Lord Macadon is just, like, garbling. And, like, his tongue is in front of him on his plate with Wrath's snake blade, like, through it. And Wrath just says, dinner is over. So we've gotten a few times that he moves super fast. Yeah. So he just, like, moved very fast. And he tells everybody to get out, and he yanks his blade out of the tongue. Anir, like, immediately goes to her and takes her up a hidden stairwell. And she's, like, in a bit of shock, obviously, because she didn't...
So, like, did he stab Macadon in the tongue holding his, like, whole mouth to the plate? Or, like, to the table?
The tongue is off.
Or did he slice the tongue off? You think the tongue is just gone?
I think he sliced his tongue off and then stabbed it into, like, stabbed it into the plate. That's what I'm assuming. So yeah, she's like hurrying after Anir, and she can tell that he's, like, kind of worried that someone might come after them, because he's, like, holding his sword, but she, like, can't really imagine anyone would attack her after that. And they get to her floor, and there's now, like, an iron gate that is, like, locking other people out. And she kind of thinks that, like, she senses that the hidden stairway they just went through is warded, and she knows that she could only get through it because of the symbol on her neck, because it, like, tingled while she was in there. So she's like,
right,
no one else can get through it.
Besides Anir.
Yeah. We're assuming he's a good guy. Anir, like, can tell that she's a bit shaken up, so says that Macadon had it coming for ages, and she's like, I know. And he realizes then that she's angry, and she's not just, like,
she's not
startled or afraid.
She's not shaking out of, like, she's shaking because she's so furious.
Yeah, she is fucking pissed. And she's actually pissed at Wrath for not letting her kill or do something about Macadon. Because she thinks, like, no one's going to respect her. And she thinks, like, in vivid detail, that if Wrath was there now, she would, like, take off all of her clothes, slit Wrath's throat, and bathe in his blood. And I'm like, that's very vivid. But,
like, this is what I mean. She's, like, this is not in character for her.
No. I don't think so like, either. I'm just like, okay.
Who is she? You know what I mean? Like, what is her character supposed to be?
Mm-hmm. So, she actually has a moment in a second about that. So, Anir tells her that Wrath's room is actually at the end of the hall, and he'll be there in 10 minutes. So, she goes to her room and, like, cleans herself up because there's blood on her from the tongue mishap. And she looks in the mirror, and she thinks about how much she's changed since Victoria died.
Okay.
Which is kind of funny. But, like, it kind of upsets her, and she thinks, like, she can't see a way of how she'll ever go back to who she was. Like, she's a completely different person, and she doesn't see any way back. And she thinks she had her heart ripped out too the same day her sister died. And she's like starting to cry, but then she's just like, nope, enough. And she like completely shuts off her sadness and grief, and like she like grasps onto the anger. So like we're kind of getting that it's not super healthy, but now she's angry, I guess. She reaches to her magic and she lets go of like her thoughts, her fears and worries, and she lets go of everything except for her wrath. And like her magic burns for her, and she thinks that like she can master her anger through like, I guess, magic, and like it's all intertwined kind of thing. But she casts a spell for light, and a rose gold flame hovers in her hand, and it doesn't burn her or melt anything, and it like shifts into a flower, and she just thinks of like throwing it at a wall and burning everything in this room. And I'm like, that'd be pretty cool. I would probably want to do that. But it would be shitty because then she wouldn't have room. But she closes her hand around it and it disappears. And she's still too pissed about like Macadon to be happy about the fact that she like just did magic that she hadn't been able to do, I guess.
Yeah.
So she just like barges into Wrath's room, and he's just there undressing and ignores her. And he like takes off his shirt, and she follows him further into his room. And she thinks like she sees his bed, and she just thinks she wants to get naked and get in his bed. Like, you're too angry to like be happy about magic, but not too angry to want to strip off all your clothes and get in his bed.
But like, you can have angry sex.
Oh, yeah. And he's still basically ignoring her, but she says, like, she just says, look at me, so he does. But he just says, like, it's late and she should go, but she says that they need to discuss this. And she thinks to herself she understands why he did it. And I don't get what she means. Like, we don't really get what she thinks he did it for. She's just like, I understand why he did it. And I'm like, 'cause he likes you?
No, like, but like, you sort of say it. It's like, it was an order McKinnon ignored. If he let her handle it, then he could be seen as weak.
Yeah, but I just thought that she meant, like, I thought she meant more with it, like, she understood. But I guess not. So yeah, he basically says it was an order, and Macadon ignored it twice, and it would be seen as weak if he didn't act. And she obviously says it was her fight, and no one will respect or fear her if she like doesn't fight her own battles, and she won't appear weak for him to maintain strength, which is another one of those feminist lines that I just love in this book.
That's true. Well, and I will say that like a lot of her assumptions about Wrath are about him gaining or maintaining power.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of her struggles stem from she does not want to be a pawn in his power plays. And she doesn't want to be an accessory to give him power.
Yeah. Which is ironic. So she asks if it's like a pride thing, and he says pride isn't his sin. And she wonders if that's the whole truth, because like this isn't the first time that she's accused him of being prideful, and like I don't know if there's more to this, but like it keeps coming up that she's like, you're prideful, and he's like, that's not my sin, but he doesn't actually say no, I'm not, or something like that. So anyway,
but like I feel like by assuming that each demon is led by a certain sin, like he's wrath and there's envy and pride and whatever, like she's assuming, like, is the assumption that you cannot feel the other emotions? Because I'm sure you can. Like, yeah, they're demons, but in the way they're presented is that they have feelings. Mm-hmm. So, like, I think assuming that him saying, oh, that's not my sin. So, like, what? So you can't feel any of the other sins? Because that seems silly. So that means he can't feel lust. I know you can, dude. You're hard for it all the time.
Yeah. I just think he doesn't want to say it's a pride thing.
Right.
So he's wording it like that. He's constantly like, nope, pride's not my sin, instead of being like,
yeah,
because that is true. That's a true statement. He can say that. He can't say, no, I'm not, I don't feel pride right now. Like, it wasn't because of pride, is what I assume. But it just gets brought up so much that I'm like, I don't know. Anyway. So she asks him then for like a blade, a knife, a sword, whatever. And she says she's going to stab him if he ever does that again. And to consider that a vow from his future queen. And he just agrees with her that he'll get her a blade, but she says that like she needs lessons, and she wants to argue that she doesn't, but like obviously he's like firm on it. And she's actually just surprised that he's agreed, but he says like he's the general of war, so of course he's thought about arming her, which is hot. I don't know why it's hot. I find it hot. And he tells her that she'll also learn how to block from magical influences during her lessons. So she's just like, okay, fine. And he tells her to go to bed because he's tired. And she kind of like teases him a bit, and it brings the sexual tension back. And like he touches her face, and she knows that he's duty bound to his brother, so they can't do anything. And I'm like, you can't. You've never even met his brother yet. Just have sex. And he tells her her first lesson is tomorrow, and says goodnight, and he goes to his balcony, and she just like stands there and like watches him on the balcony for a bit, and wonders if like he has, I guess, heat magic of some kind to like keep himself warm, because like obviously his shirt is off,
and
but
it's
like
freezing cold out there because it's snowing.
Yeah. And like she's like, he didn't get hypothermia, she did, so I'm like, I'm assuming he has something, some kind of thing to keep himself warm. He also has like wine, and it's a dark purple with silver specks, and it kind of looks like a galaxy, so we're assuming it's demon wine, because Anir told her she'd know it when she sees it. And he just says, if you're going to lurk, you may as well come drink. And he says it'll help her sleep, because like obviously she just saw something traumatic. She's probably going to struggle sleeping. And like he drinks some first to show that like I guess it's safe, or like as a challenge.
But like safe for him is different than safe for her.
I know. He's a demon. She drinks everything. And I'm like, what are you doing? You can't just drink things. So she does try it, and she loves it. And he says like he thought that she would like it, and it's demon berry wine, and he says it's one of two of the best offerings of the demon realm. And in the distance, I guess they're like just looking around. She can see a castle, so she asks whose it is, and it's Pride's. And she asks if he's sent word yet, but he hasn't. And she wants him to like send word so that she can solve the murder and leave before like too much time has passed. And she thinks of how much she enjoys being with Wrath, even though like he's supposed to be her enemy. And then she's like, wait, what was the second best thing about the demon realm? And he says the Crescent Shallows, which is like a lagoon, and it's like above a lava chamber, so like they're warm, and they're just like
it's a hot springs.
Yeah. She asks where it is, and he's kind of being cagey, so she's like, it's literally here, isn't it? You just don't want to show me. And he says like it has rules, and he doesn't think it's a good idea. And she's like, so you're deciding for me then? And she says since she's marrying Pride, she will be his future queen. And he doesn't agree to that. Like, he doesn't say anything, which like is kind of like, oh, there's something going on. You can tell.
Yeah.
And we find out this week, so.
We find part of it out this week.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what else there is, because I haven't read past this week. But, so she just asks him to take her there, and he says that nothing made can enter the water, so they would need to take off all of their clothes. And she's like, so what? But he also calls her my future queen. So you're like, he didn't agree to it before, but he's calling her now, so it's like he didn't agree before because of the pride part of it. It kind of seems like is what I was kind of putting together. Anyway, he says he didn't think she'd want to bathe with him naked, and she asks if that's all, like,
yeah,
that's not a big deal. He's already seen her naked, and she says, like, seems like there's some other reason he wants to avoid it. And he tells her that on occasion, it seeks the heart of those who enters and reflects the truth. And I'm just like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
And I don't think it happens, but I don't know. But okay. And she thinks, like, if she has to give up some of her truth to see his, then it's absolutely worth it. And we're like, yeah, of course it is. So she asks to go. And he's, like, surprised. And I'm like, why are you surprised? Like, anyone would agree to go to that. Like, she's not worried about being naked. So he, like, magics them there. And it seems really cool. She's like, I should ask him about his magic. And then she's just distracted by the lagoon. But it's, like, subterranean, and, like, the lake of fire apparently feeds into it. So we saw that last week, I think. And, like, the ceiling is painted with the moon phases. And she, like, goes to put her toes in, but he tells her that she needs to take everything off first, and kind of, like, points out some bones to imply that, like, if you get in without taking everything off, you'll die. We're like, okay. Yep. And he's just like, I'll take you to your room and you can keep the wine and bathe there. And she's just like, no, I'm going to take all my clothes off and get in. Which she takes her clothes off. And she asks if he plans to swim or watch her all night. And he just, like, magically disappears his clothes.
Of course he does.
Yeah. And she just, like, ogles him for a long time. Yeah. And obviously he's hard because, of course, he is. Yeah. And she notices a dagger with roses, like, tattooed on his thigh. And, like, he has a bunch of tattoos. She goes to take off her cornicello, but he says that, like, she can leave that and the flowers and bones in her hair because they're not made. They're, like, organic, I guess. You'd think the string on the horn wouldn't be.
Yeah.
Like, that's not.
And also, isn't it like set in metal with, like, like a jewel sort of thing over top of it?
Yeah.
So, like,
wouldn't we be worried that you wouldn't take a chance?
Well, he does.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. So they walk into the water and it's nice. So they get in deep and he goes under and he comes up and he's, like, laughing and has a genuine smile on his face. And she's like, shit, this is doing something to me. So she dunks herself under too so that he can't read her expression. There's obviously so much tension. They're naked. And she moves towards him, but she actually, like, turns him around so she can see his back, which she's like, what the fuck? But he has a tattoo on his back, and it's in Latin. And it says, the stars incline us, they do not bind us. And it kind of makes her think about how she, like, unwittingly bound him, like, in the first book, and she bound him to the circle for days, and, like, bound him to her as well. And she's surprised he isn't angry about it. And she actually apologizes to him, which I think is, like,
a decent thing
long
to do.
Overdue. Yeah. But he says, like, he just says fate may try to encourage their path, but they have choices. And, like, that's a big thing with him, is he always says, like, she has a choice. Yeah. And, like, she says that, like, she thought he didn't have free will, but he says choices are granted to all, but for some there's a price. So I guess the implication is that, like, if he wants to make his own choices, there are consequences. The price for it can be, the consequences are, like, more dire. Yeah. And she asks if the tattoo was, like, to remind him of the choice, and he says yes. And he says a mortal John Milton quote that is better to reign in hell than serve in heaven is, like, kind of how he feels. And he says he would do terrible things to choose his destiny. And he says, like, all of his ink is a choice, except for, like, their bonding tattoo thing. She sees some more script on his clavicle and like traces it, and it of course says action, not words. So it is like his motto, which is annoying.
Yeah.
Because we had this conversation last week of like, you can still say things.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
And like,
you can still defend yourself when Envy says that you're a shitty person.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's stupid. And I was like, oh, maybe it's just a mirror. Like, maybe he's just saying that, like, no, it's like his motto. He's got it tattooed on himself.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Yep.
She asks about the design on his thigh, but they've kind of, like, drifted so close while she was looking at his clavicle that she, like, loses the train of her thought. And, like, the longing is getting so out of control. She, like, pushes his hair back, and she like kisses his collarbone, and he holds her lower back, and she kisses his other shoulder, and she says like she knows he won't tell her his true name, but muttering wrath now would be so odd, so maybe they should just stop talking and make out.
Woo!
So she kisses him. I know, I'm like, yeah, we're getting it, so she kisses him, and she just thinks to herself, like, they can do this for one night and it not change anything. And maybe if they, like, actually have sex, she won't be so affected by the sins. And she won't want him so much.
Can you imagine saying that to him, though? Like, hey, I think we should do it tonight so that I won't want you so much.
Yeah. I don't think she says that out loud, but it would be bad. But yeah, that's her thought process. And then she's like, she does say, unless you don't want to. And he kisses her. So, like, obviously it's mutual. Something inside of her feels like it's coming alive. And she thinks he feels like magic. And she wants it. So he touches the mark on her neck. And she thinks it normally makes her think about things and, like, gets her out of the move. But she doesn't want, like, she wants this so much that she's like, I refuse to leave this present moment and think about anything else, which is interesting. She's connected. So she touches his thighs and teases him and says, it's awful, isn't it, to like be teased. So he kisses her and then like starts fingering her and teasing her a lot, and we're like, whoa, this is really getting there. And she's moaning.
Is it bad that the only thing I can think of is that, like, what if she gets an infection because they are in water right now and you're like, and maybe people do it, but doctors say you're not supposed to. Because
you shouldn't. Yeah,
you shouldn't do it in water because the bacteria in the water could go up your vagine when somebody is playing around with it.
Yeah,
so
very true.
That is what I think
Not
of
worth
in
it.
this moment, is that they are underwater. She is getting fingered, and like, what if she gets infections?
She might. I guess magic.
Fine.
So, yeah. And she's loving it. And she can tell that he's, like, super attentive to, like, what she likes.
Of course.
Of course he is. And he can read what feels the best and all this shit. So, like, he's really good at it immediately. And she asks him to take her to his bedchamber. And he asks if that's what she wants. And he's kind of like, if his queen commands it. And she says, obviously, yes. And he asks if he's her humble servant now, kind of implying that, like, he's not going to do whatever she wants. But then she, like, ends up teasing him a bit. And he's like, okay, we're going. It's kind of funny. And, of course, we get the like, he didn't lie. It is better than any of the fantasies and anything he said that, like, because last week he said, when I actually touch you, you'll know it's you'll know it's real, all that bullshit. And she's like, he was right. And we're like, ugh. And she, like, wraps her legs around him and rocks against him, and she thinks the realm is only enhancing what she already felt, which, like, we kind of all knew already. She's, like, basically using his dick to pleasure herself. And then she says, take me to your bedchamber now. And he's like, yep, because I guess she's teasing him so much that he's like, I'll do it.
So, Wrath, I guess, magics them, like, transports them magically, with his hands between her legs.
Of course.
Yeah. And when they, like, appear, they're not in his bedroom. They're leaning against the door outside of it. And, like, they don't have their clothes on or anything like that. He just, like, brought them back naked.
Yeah.
And, like, he's breathing real hard, and, like, she's stroking his quote-unquote impressive length.
Of course.
And she's, like, assuming that that's why he mistakenly, like, magicked them outside his room instead of in his room. Like, he can't concentrate because he's so, like, in it.
Yeah. I assume there's, like, a barrier that you can't just transport into
Well, I
his
think
room.
he could.
I guess. Maybe it just keeps everybody from doing it.
Maybe.
I don't know. Or he's just so into it that he can't pay attention.
Anyway, so, like, she likes that she can distract him enough to make that mistake. She also really likes the way she was feeling and thought, like, maybe it would be okay to take a lover before marrying Pride. And, like, apparently, you know, she's like, he doesn't seem to care that I'm here. He hasn't called or summoned. And I'm like, haven't you been there for, like, a day? Yeah. Like, one day. But, like, she's like, he hasn't sent any correspondence yet, so obviously he doesn't care that I'm here.
Yeah, I guess some of the other princes have, so it is odd, especially if he is supposed to marry her. But
so she's like, I guess it's okay if he doesn't seem to care, then maybe I can take a lover.
I'll just fuck his brother.
Yeah. And, like, she says she didn't expect this or him to feel so right.
Interesting.
And, like, she thinks that they are on the verge of discovering how good they can be together.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so, like, she is right on the verge of an orgasm when all of a sudden pain erupts within her. And it's like she says it's like the most intense pain she's ever felt.
I was so pissed.
Yeah, I know. Can you imagine?
No.
So, like, she's, like, hunched over in pain, and Wrath asks, like, are you okay?
Obviously not.
But, like, yeah, that's it. Like, obviously she's not. And she tells him she's got, like, this really bad pain in her heart.
Which is interesting.
And I don't...
That she knows it's her heart.
Yeah, but, like, then she says she thinks it's the horn of Hades. But I'm like, how do you know that? Like, what is making you have this leap?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, yeah, it's the worst pain she's ever felt. So Wrath offers to, like, take her to a healer. Like, she just says, like, oh, I'm in so much pain. And he's like, should I send for a healer? He doesn't know what the pain is. And she's like, I think it's the horn of Hades. And he's like, shit. He magics them then to, like, this old tower and starts beating on the door. And, like, she's fully clothed again. He magicked himself a pair of pants, but no shirt.
Of course.
Because, you know, why would he put a shirt on?
Gotta look hot for the ladies.
Yeah. But, like, I literally don't understand it. They're outdoors. Like, this, I assume. So they're, like, banging on the door to this tower. So, like, he must be cold. And if he can magic himself pants, why can't he magic himself a top?
Gotta look hot for the ladies.
So... like, Emilia can see the concern on his face. And I'm like, if I'm in the worst pain I've ever felt before, I am not looking at the concern on his face. I'm concerned about my concern.
Yeah, the stakes weren't high enough. Like, she's like, this is the worst pain ever. And I'm like, you're not acting like it's the worst pain ever.
No, because she's like, I can still walk and follow him places.
I'm like... have you just not had a lot of pain?
Yeah.
Like
maybe
what...
maybe that's actually what it is. Maybe she's just not in that much pain. But she's never had anything bad happen to her before. So she's like, this is the worst pain ever.
Yeah, like that's what it seems like.
And it's like getting a tattoo level pain.
Yeah. Take a nap.
Yeah. Anyway, so she, like, tries to take the cornicello off, because she's like, if this is what's causing me pain, I'll remove it. But
Smart.
Wrath is like, no, don't.
Okay.
But, like, the pain keeps getting worse, so he keeps banging on the door until, like, this older woman opens the door. So, she introduces herself as Celestia, matron of curses and poisons, and she invites them in. And Wrath is, like, impatient for Celestia to, like, get to work. She doesn't rush in, like, gathering her things, and, like, just their sort of banter indicates, like, she's not afraid of him. Like, he's trying to order her around and be, like, threatening and menacing, and she's like, I ain't scared of you.
It's a trope.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I'm okay with it, too. She gathers, like, everything she needs, and then she tells Emilia that she actually needs a lock of her hair. And this moment reminded me of a Discovery of Witches.
Exactly the same thing I was
Because
thinking.
same thing in Discovery of Witches, like, Diana learned growing up, small child to adult, that, like, after she brushed her hair, you always clean the brush and flush the hair down the toilet. You always, like, clipped your nails on a little tissue and then gathered that up and threw that out in the toilet or something and flushed it away. Like, so that you never left a trace of your DNA around for someone to get a hold of.
Yeah.
So she thinks of the same thing. Her Nana always taught them to never leave hair or nail clippings around, because if someone wanted to, like, do a curse on them or some sort of spell involving them, they would need, like, their DNA, a lock of their hair, or nail clippings or something. So she was apprehensive. She didn't want to give this woman a lock of her hair. She was like, can we do it without?
Yeah.
But Celestia assures her that she'll be fine. She says, nobody here wants to do you harm. And she said, and don't worry, you're going to drink the entire potion I make, and then I'll burn the bowl. So, like, there's no trace of you. So, she makes it, and, you know, they do, like, chat a little bit as she's making it, but then she does make it and gives it to her to drink, and asks, were they at the Crescent Shallows? And Emilia's like, yes, we were. And she says that certain magic cannot enter those waters without grave consequences. And, like, I guess insinuating that the cornicello is this certain magic. And then, like, she tells us a couple of rumors, and I'm assuming they're about the Crescent Shallow. She says, like, the goddesses owned those waters, and it burns away what doesn't belong. But then another belief is that the feared, quote unquote, the feared, seek to reclaim what was taken from them in whatever way possible. I don't understand what that has to do with water.
I didn't really understand what was happening here. I was like, she should have just taken the cornicello off. But then I'm like, is the cornicello like a red herring? Is it actually her magic that couldn't go in the water? Also, why did it wait so long and for them to leave before it attacked her heart? Like, so much happening here. So confusing.
Yeah. So, like, I don't really understand what the feared seeking to reclaim what was taken from them. What does that have to do with water? How does that, like, does the water belong to the feared and they're trying to reclaim what is theirs through whatever way necessary by taking it from people that enter? Like, maybe it's that sort of a thing. So Emilia then asks, are the feared, because she doesn't really know who they are, so are the feared the goddesses or the demon princes? She doesn't know who they are, and she's assuming it's one or the other. But Wrath then sort of, like, cuts off their conversation first, like, and says, like, sort of warns Celestia, like, to stop talking. So there's something around the feared goddesses, demons that Emilia is asking about that she's not allowed to know about, I guess.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And, like, she's feeling better now. Like, the pain instantly goes away after she drinks the potion.
And I'm like, I don't really get it, because I'm like, was it a curse or a poison? Like,
I'm assuming it was a curse.
Guess,
like,
yeah, it's just interesting.
Yeah. So, like, Emilia's obviously annoyed with Wrath for taking her there, even though she insisted.
She forced him.
I would be more annoyed that he told her to leave the cornicello on. Like,
oh, 100%.
Like,
yeah, that was stupid.
But, like, she was like, dude, you put me at risk. But Celestia's like, Wrath wouldn't do that. So, like, he didn't know. So don't be mad at him for that. But then she says, you should be asking him about the other secret that impacts both of you. And Wrath just gets what we call the killing calm. He is so angry. He is just like a calm, vacant thing. And he tells Celestia that she's walking on dangerous ground. But again, we've already established she's not afraid of him. So she just, like, ignores him. And, like, she's given Emilia the potion, and she tells her that it won't, like, this affliction won't bother her anymore, and she can keep wearing the cornicello. Like, it's not going to be an issue. So, like, I'm wondering, does this mean she can get back in the lagoon again? Like, it's not going to bother her anymore, or does she have to take the cornicello off?
No idea.
But then she warns Wrath that he needs to watch what he's doing because the other sins are watching, and sort of insinuates, like, what he did with the two guys who bad-mouthed her. So, like, what's his face? The guy he dumped a mountain on? And then the guy that he sliced his tongue off. Like, he's letting his emotions come too close to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And
he has feelings.
Yeah. And, like, we know that. Like, if the fact that he's always like, don't show them your fears, don't show them your weaknesses, like, to the other sins. And then he's doing that and broadcasting his feelings to the other sins. You know what I mean? So, like, he needs...
showing that she's a weakness for him.
So, like, he needs to show that he needs to, like, watch out what he's doing. Mm-hmm. And, like, he gets mad at her about that. Sort of being like, I don't know if it's a, like, the way it sort of came across was like, he's mad that she noticed, but also, like, for insinuating that he doesn't know what he's doing. Mm-hmm. Maybe?
Yeah.
But she just tells him, like, you're being irresponsible not telling Emilia. And Emilia's just...
like, tell
Emilia's
us.
just there. She's like, I'm sorry, what? Like, not tell me about what? And, like, she's annoyed that Celestia knows something that she doesn't know about herself.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, if whatever this is, how many other people know? And that's making her angry. And I'm like, what else is new? You're getting angry. So then she demands the truth from him, from Wrath. And then he just says, I thought we had more time. And I'm like, time for what? But then he does transport them away to his personal library and magics the room so that no one can hear their conversation.
It's good, I guess.
So, like, it takes him ages to tell her what the secret is. Like, he's just delaying, and, like, she says that he's, like, really quiet and, like, sort of, like, wandering around, and she's, like, getting stressed out because she's like, what the hell is it? And I would be like, am I dying? Are you dying? Who's dying? Like, what's happening? But he takes ages. But then he brings up marking her. And she asks, like, why you did it. Why did you mark me? Because and he sort of implies, like, you don't really understand what the marking is or does. Mm-hmm. But so he's like, so tell me what you know about marks. And she's like, okay, well, my Nana taught me that it allows the marked person to summon a demon at any time as long as he draws breath. So, like, as long as the demon is alive, she can summon him with the mark. And then she mentions, like, notwithstanding that time that Envy stabbed you and I tried to summon you a whole bunch, and you ignored me, so I thought you were dead.
Yeah.
And, like, indicates that she was distraught about that. That happened in book 1. And he's sort of, like, smirky. Like, he's like, oh, like, you cared.
You care.
Like, you were worried about me. But then he tells her that, like, it's actually even more special than that because it can't ever be broken. Like, even in death, it cannot be broken. So, like, she's gonna die. She's a mortal person. She is going to die, and their souls will still be linked. Like, even if in the, like, so she dies, goes to the underworld or wherever, she's still gonna have access to the mark. Yeah. So, and then she's like, he says, even in death, it can't be broken. She's like, but you're immortal. And he's like, yes. So, you know, indicating, like, that's how powerful it is.
Wouldn't we assume that the bride of Pride would get immortality?
We would. I would. Like, it seems silly for him to marry her only for, like, 50 years, and then she died, and then he'd have to take another one. That seems silly.
Yeah, okay.
But she doesn't, like, her assumption, her plan for her life is not to stay married to Pride, right?
No,
she just wants to...
Well, it's maybe not even to marry him at all. She just wants to, like, figure out who murdered her.
She's just agreed to marry him so she can get in, figure out who's behind Victoria's murder, and then go back to her life. Yeah. But then he tells her there's more. So it's not just that they are linked now for eternity. Like, essentially their souls are joined. But he tells her there's more. And she almost, like, doesn't want to hear it anymore, even though she demanded he tell her.
I know. I'm like, if she actually gets him to stop, I'm going to throw this book. Is what I was thinking.
But, like, he doesn't let her stop. Like, he does. He's like, do you want to go back to your room? And she does say no, like, carry on. But she has this, like, a bad feeling. Like, she's not going to like what he tells her. And then he tells her that, like, he brings up the whole situation with the Viperidae, that demon that almost killed her. And that was the night he gave her the mark. And he says the only reason she survived is because he gave her the mark and took the venom from her body into his own. And of course, being immortal, he can burn it off and not be harmed. And then he said that spell is actually a sort of acceptance. So, in the last book, we learned that her summoning was sort of like an engagement, right?
Yeah.
And she released him from that, so she assumed that it sort of broke that off. But he says that the mark was kind of an acceptance. And she compares their tattoos then, because the tattoos changed at some point. And she sees that now they are identical. And Wrath drops, like, he tells her the truth then, that Pride has not, nor will ever summon her, because she isn't Pride's intended. She's Wrath's. Dun dun dun!
So, does this mean that she agreed to marry Pride even though she's engaged, but so he's not going to summon her unless she breaks off the engagement?
I honestly don't really know. I don't really get this bit because, like, she signed a contract.
Yeah, it's kind of
so
confusing.
Like, she signed a contract and she thought she saw Pride on that contract. So she assumed she was making an engagement contract with Pride. Whether Wrath knew she was signing that and it's null and void, so it doesn't matter, I don't really know.
Yeah. Okay.
I kind of can't be sure, but he's sort of what he's saying is that contract essentially is null and void.
Yeah.
And in all fairness, I don't know, her having that mark now, I don't know if she can ever marry one of the other princes. Because, again, like he said, her summoning him was her binding them. So that was almost her demand / asking him to tie himself to marriage without his choice. But then him marking her was his acceptance of that demand. It's almost like now that she's marked, like, she's his.
Yeah.
So, like, it seems like no matter what, she's not going to be able to marry anybody else.
Yeah.
And, like, to be fair, rightfully so. He's marked her. What other prince is going to want someone that is soul-bound, like, to their brother?
Yeah.
And so him just, like, dropping that sort of, like, truth on her, that, like, you were never Pride's intended, you're mine. She's shocked. And suddenly she has a vision. And she doesn't know if it's past or future or pure illusion. But it's, like, a really hot scene where they're, like, in a bed together and she's riding him. And there's, like, thousands of candles around. And, like, she says it's, like, the best feeling on the face of the planet. And I'm like, past, future, or illusion, that seems an odd thing to say.
It is, yeah.
So she's, like, really unhappy about this news. Like, even, so, like, he sort of pulls her out of that illusion. And, like, even though Wrath says, so, like, he just says, we're well suited enough, like, as a reason why they should get married.
Yeah.
But that's not her that's not her problem with it. Like, on top of the fact that, like, she's like, we're well suited enough just seems, like, a bit insulting.
Yeah.
She's also like, if she's here, then she can't get to House Pride. So nobody is going to talk to her or give her any info on his first bride to figure out Victoria's death. So, like, she feels like her whole plan was a failure. Like, she feels like she's failing her sister now, because if she can't get into House Pride and talk to people, how is she supposed to solve her sister's murder? So, like, what?
I find this odd. I guess she never was planning to marry Pride, but it's just like, I don't know. She gets very caught up in, like, he's never gonna actually like me, because her big thing is, like, they're well suited enough. It's very, this is what reminded me of Pride and Prejudice. Like, the first proposal in Pride and Prejudice. Like, I don't know. I just feel like she's very stuck on the marrying for love thing. And I'm like, aren't we more worried about, like, staying alive and avenging your sister than we are about marrying someone for love? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know.
It was just, I found it interesting that, like, her biggest problem with all of this is she's like, but I want to love someone and he's never gonna love me. I'm like, he is, though.
Yeah.
Like,
it's definitely a factor.
It's just funny.
But, like, she gets mad at him at this point because she lectures him about saying she always has a choice, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
How he likes to say she has it, but she feels like she never seems to. Because, like, she didn't have a choice initially when she bound herself to him. Like, that wasn't really her choice. It was an accident. And then he marked her. That was not her choice. She didn't feel like she had a choice signing that contract and coming down here. Like, she didn't have a choice leaving her family because they were in danger. So, like, she feels like even though he says, yeah, no, you always have a choice with me, she feels like everything that has led her to this point has not been her choice.
Yeah.
But he counters that, like, the fact that he offered her his help the night that she was going to the Viperde, and she chose not to accept that help because she didn't trust him.
Mm-hmm.
That was her choice.
Yeah.
So he's like, there's your choice. Everything that happened was because you made that choice. And now we're intended. So, like, consider that sort of the choice.
Yeah.
But he also reveals that him marking her and giving his acceptance to their bond, and I guess their betrothal, meant that now they would start to have urges. So sort of, I feel like, kind of like a mate bond is sort of how I'm thinking it. So, like,
yeah,
she puts together that, like, since having the mark, her distrust of him has been eroding. Like, she's mm-hmm. accepting him, and she's not thinking as much about all the times he's betrayed her. And I'm like, I feel like she is, though. Like, every time they get hot and heavy, and then she, like, comes back into herself, she's like, oh, right, I hate him. So, like, I don't see how it's, like, her distrust of him is, like, lessened. Like, she hasn't been here long enough. Like, this is my issue, is that, like, I feel like this is happening very fast. Her being like,
mm-hmm.
oh, yeah, he's right. I've been getting more feelings, and my trust has been gaining, and I don't hate him as much. And, like, I wish we had, like, a montage of them spending, like, a week together or something like that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel like it's been long enough for her to think those things. And she thinks, too, that it's been, like, harder to stay away from him. And I'm like, when? When has it been harder to stay away from him? Is it when you're in his immediate vicinity and get turned on? Like, because to me, that's not enough.
Yeah.
But she thinks it's because their bond is getting stronger, and it's, like, a need to bed her husband and secure their marriage. So he then tells her, too, that the mark helps to subdue those urges, which is why he strokes her mark every time they're together and every time they're, like, kissing. He strokes her mark. We've seen it, like, at least 2 to 3 times this week. And it's because he's trying to, like, to make those urges go away for her. And
so she has a choice.
Yeah, and, like, you even mentioned that he stroked her mark, and then she started to remember things and backed away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, like, it happens each time. The only time it didn't happen was when they were in the lagoon. He stroked it, and she was like, normally she thinks again, but this time she doesn't want to.
Yeah.
So he's trying to, like, bring her back so that she has a choice. And yeah, I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So she's still mad, though, at all the secrecy. Like, why didn't you tell me this?
Yeah.
And he says it's because, like, he doesn't want her to be here. Which is, in my head, that's kind of hurtful. And I understand he's saying it not in a hurtful way. He's like, I don't want you to be here, like, dealing with all of this. Like, he wants her to be where she's happy with her family, right?
Yeah.
But he also won't answer the question. And his response is that I can't answer. So she's like, oh, it's not that he won't answer, he can't answer. So there's some sort of magic preventing him from answering. So this has there's something to do with the curse going on.
Yeah, we've kind of got that a few times, and I'm like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah. So then she actually asks about her contract with Pride, and he tells her if their marriage is accepted, it becomes void. So I guess, but again, like, would he even accept her with this mark that she has for all eternity? But in other words, they need to consummate their marriage. They need to have sex for their marriage to be accepted. And this is actually the reason that she can't travel to other houses, because technically she is the future co-ruler of House Wrath.
Yeah, because she was like, shouldn't I be able to go to Pride? I am in House Pride. But she's not.
No, she is technically a member of House Wrath. Also, he tells her that everyone in his realm knows. Everyone in his court knows, except for her.
Yeah.
That would piss me off.
I would lose my shit.
Yeah. It's just bad.
Yeah.
So she understands now that, like, this is why he's punishing the two guys so harshly. Less that she's his guest or whatever, but, like, she is actually their direct future ruler.
Which is like, why are they so stupid?
Yeah, yes, exactly. It means that, like, they're all almost even more stupid. Because, like, if she's Pride's future wife, and therefore the queen, like, yeah, she's above them, but Wrath is still their direct ruler, so that's who they answer to. She's more be, like, a figurehead. You know what I mean? But, like, knowing now that, like, she's technically the future co-ruler of their house indicates that, like, they're even more stupid.
I just don't get it.
So she's like, oh, they spoke ill of their future co-ruler. And she thinks back to a conversation she heard between Anir and Wrath about something, about how, like, he needs to marry or something like that to gain power. Or some, like, I don't 100% remember it. It's from book 1. But she overhears something to that effect and is thinking about that now and thinking about how marrying her, Wrath will gain power. So she thinks that he's agreeing to this whole union to align with her for power and will never love her.
Yeah.
Even though she was like, I wasn't here looking for love. But yet, like you said, she's focusing on the fact that he won't love her. And she also is like, she's also thinking, like, she doesn't want to be a pawn in his play for power. Then she says, if we had had sex tonight, would that have consummated the marriage without her knowledge? And he said he wouldn't have betrayed her choice that way, and they would have just done other things. So he had never planned on having sex with her tonight while they were, like, fooling around against the door. He would have just given her orgasms other ways.
Yeah.
And she's still mad. Like, in her mind, he's ruined her chances of revenge.
Yeah.
So she actually asks him to escort her to House Envy tomorrow morning. So they got a letter earlier inviting her for a visit to House Envy. So she's going to take him up on it, and she wants to go to Envy's house. And he's pissed.
Yeah.
And, like, rightfully so. It's like she's mad at him, so she's running away.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, he says, okay, fine. So he escorts her to a room to pack and says, I'll notify them. We'll leave at first light. So she gets a bath, and then she hides the cornicello in her vanity, and she says she'll let Wrath know that it's there. But she doesn't want to bring that to Envy with how, like, desperately he wanted it. So she doesn't want it near him. But in the process, she sees, like, this beautiful brush and mirror set on her vanity. And she's like, well, that's from my husband. And she thinks of how, like, thoughtful he is.
He already loves her.
Yeah.
So stupid.
But she thinks that she wants a true partner to love her, and she doesn't think Wrath loves her. Because, like, getting that, like, the brush and the mirror set, she's like, what would it be like to have such a, like, an attentive husband? But also, I want to marry for love.
Yeah.
And, like, she does think that they are well suited to each other, and, like, yeah, there's attraction there, and they've laid a good foundation. But, she says, like, they haven't laid a good foundation for a relationship. Like, they don't trust each other. And then she just brings up very briefly, and I don't know if it's ever brought up again, that she's worried that Wrath, like, had a person before she forced the bond with him.
Yeah. Because she asked him in his library, she was like, is there someone else? And he just doesn't answer. So she's like, there probably is. He just didn't want to say. But, yeah, so I thought that this was going to be like a storyline. I'm like, God damn it. But nope.
And I'm kind of glad that.
Oh, so
right?
glad.
I sort of hate that, like, the vindictive ex comes back and tries to, like, tear the eye back towards her, but the man doesn't see her anymore. But then there's always like a miscommunication, and like the current girl sees the ex in him in a compromising position and gets angry and storms out, and then he has to reassure her that we didn't do anything. I don't love her. I love you. I'm glad that like, I don't like that. That's probably my least favorite trope. I actually really despise it. She also thinks that, like, when Wrath is around, her grief for Victoria lessens. Like, it's not as severe. And that actually annoys her the most about Wrath, because she's like, her family couldn't pull her from her grief, but Wrath can. Mm-hmm. So, like, that's a problem she has. So, like, she's just, like, devolving. Yeah. And then she's like, she's worried that Wrath wouldn't allow himself to love her, and she might not allow herself to love him, even though she would easily sleep with him or marry him, but love is a different story. So she's even saying, like, she could, like, see herself marrying him, but it wouldn't be, she doesn't want it to be, like, a marriage of convenience. She wants a marriage of love.
I just, like, I don't know. I'm like, this seems like the least of your worries at this point in time, is to be worried about marrying for love. Like, yeah. Why don't you focus on your focus and...
Well, but so this is the thing. She thinks that she was willing to marry Pride out of convenience to get info about his first bride, but, like, marrying Wrath is not going to help her mission at all. So, like, why would she do it? Yeah. But at the same time, like, she just is, again, she was grateful to Wrath for keeping her angry and not morose and sad. And the more she thought about Victoria, the easier it is for her to not be turned on by him. So, like, essentially she's using her grief to push her feelings down for Wrath. Mm-hmm. So that's fun for her, I guess. So in the morning, Wrath sends her, like, this beautiful black dress to put on and her olive branch ring. And they go to Envy's court, and they're matching. They're in matching outfits. Like, she's got a black dress with, like, gold trim, and he's also wearing, like, a black jacket with gold trim. And it's sort of identifying her as a member of his court and his, like, betrothed. So, like, don't mess with her. And, like, she shows up, and Envy is being a bit of a dick, which we sort of expected. What else is new? And, he, like, sort of says, okay, Wrath, bye. And Wrath is like, no, I'll show her to her chamber before I go. And he's like, no, you won't. And Wrath's like, not an option. I'm showing her to her chamber. Like, and they have, like, a little battle of wills. And, of course, Wrath wins. Mm-hmm. So Envy is like, okay, fine. So they go to her chambers, and Wrath, like, inspects everything, which sort of makes her giggle. Like, she's like, oh, look, you being all, like, caring, I guess. Yeah. So, like, he sort of growls at her and stalks towards her. He's like, you think, like, me being like this is funny? And she sort of, again, knows that she could move out of the way, and he's giving her enough space to let her move out of the way, but she's like, I'm not backing down. And he gets real close and she thinks he's going to kiss her. So then she changes the subject so that he won't. And she asks how to get back to his court if she needs to. And plants that if she needs to in there to sort of indicate to him maybe she won't come back. Like, she's trying to needle him at the same time. Yeah. And then he just tells her that his home is her home, and, like, he doesn't... Because she sort of insinuates, like, am I going to need an invitation to come back? Because she needed an invitation to come here. So does she need an invitation to come back? And he says, no, like, my home is your home. Just send for an escort. You don't need an invitation. And I'm like, why doesn't she just, like, use the mark and summon him to come pick her up? Like, why does she have to send a note? Yeah.
That's true.
But then he gives her something before he goes, and, like, she sits her on the bed, and then he starts, like, lifting up her skirt and, like, woo! But then, and she sort of thinks that that's where it's going, but he's like, if we're going to consummate our marriage, it's not going to be in my brother's house. Like, but then he actually puts a dagger, like a sheath around her thigh with a dagger. And the dagger itself is gorgeous. It has like wildflowers engraved on it. And it fits her perfectly. So she's like, oh my God, here's another example of him being considerate.
And loving her.
But he then tries to deflect on, like, the kindness and tells her to send word when she wants to return and he'll come for her. And she sort of is like, doesn't know. So if she goes back, if she, like, summons him to go back to House Wrath, like, does that mean she's accepting their marriage? Because she also has plans for her life. So, like, after finding out all about Victoria's death and figuring out what she needs to figure out, she wants to go back home to her family and to her restaurant. And she knows if she chooses Wrath, that means never going back to that life. And then she thinks that she thought that true love only enhanced a person's life and not steal from it. And I thought this was an incredibly naive thought.
Yeah.
Because, like, you sometimes have to make sacrifices for the person you love. Compromise, yeah. Like, even something so little as deciding, like, what town you're going to live in. Or, like, how many kids, if any, you're going to have. Like, are you going to have pets? Like, you know, sometimes, you got a really good job offer. We have to move. Like, anything like that. You make sacrifices for the person that you love. So, for her being like, I thought being in love meant your life was enhanced. I didn't think anything took away. I feel like it's pretty naive to think that.
Yeah, which I think is maybe the point.
Yeah.
She's still a baby.
How old is she? Like 21, 22, 23?
I
know it told us the last... It did tell us in the last book, but I forget.
Me too.
So she tells Wrath then that, like, she needs to settle in. Like, I guess they're both having feelings, so she's trying to dismiss him so that he just goes away. And so he leaves, and she starts to plot her newest scheme. So she's got another idea for how she can further her goal. So later on, a servant comes to tell Emilia that she's going to be doing a private dinner with Envy later. And she's sort of like, I'm pretty confident he's not going to try and kill me. Because, like, the last time they interacted was not great. Like, he made, like, one of his vampires follow her. He, like, threatened her family. He sicked a whole bunch of demons, like, those demon beast things on them. So, like, he definitely threatened her life by doing all those things. And she's like, now that I'm here and now that I'm Wrath's official, like, betrothed, you know, he's not going to do that.
Yeah.
So,
even though I think she was, I guess, already betrothed to him at that point.
Yeah, but I guess now that they're in the underworld and he's delivered her and he's, like, Envy's extended her an invitation, like, I feel like he can't really do that now.
Yeah, that'd be...
They're all very preoccupied with politeness and, like, manners and that sort of thing and propriety, so, like, I feel like inviting someone to your house and then killing you, not very polite.
You make a good point.
So, like, he sends her this hunter green dress to wear with, like, this beautiful emerald necklace. And she feels at that moment like a true princess of hell.
Interesting.
So she's escorted to Envy, and they're in, like, she thinks it's like a gentleman's club sort of thing, like one of those, like, smoking rooms almost that you see in, like, Regency England, how the men go to these, like, private clubs. Not like a strip club or anything, like, just, it's got tables and a fireplace and, you know.
Yeah.
So that's where they're eating dinner. And she now knows that the first time he saw her, he knew what her tattoo meant. And he was cryptic about it. And so, like, they're just having banter, and she tells him, she was like, it would have been nice if you told me that. And he's like, I'm not nice. And he's like, even if I was, like, I didn't want to ruin the fun. Yeah. And he even says that they all bet on the outcome. And, like, and then he says that he made a lot of money off of greed. Or, like, he won something from greed. I don't know if it's money or if it's a favor or what, because, like, I can't imagine all of these princes would bet money. Like, what do they need money for?
No.
So, like, I don't even know what the outcome is. Like, how has the outcome been decided? Because they're still not married. They have to consummate. So, like, I don't know.
No, me neither.
But, like, she then, I don't understand her strategy, because then she needles him that, like, he must have really wanted her to join his house, like, even knowing about the bond. Because, like, he asked her to join his house when they first met. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, wow. So she's sort of being like, wow, you must have been really desperate to want me to join your house, even knowing that I was bonded to your brother. Like, you must be really lonely. And she actually sees hurt in his eyes, and then they, like, trade barbs a little bit more, and, like, Envy gets real angry at something, and she can feel his power take hold of her, but then she swipes her mark, and the power, like, loosens its grip, so, like, she comes back to herself again, so, like, this is gonna be her little trick, I feel.
Yeah.
So, like, the emotions get so heightened that each of them have their hand on their blades, and it's really tense. But then the food gets there, and Envy's like, why don't we make this a peace offering? Like, let's not kill each other today. So he says instead, he asks her, like, have you ever tried putting your magic in food or drink? She's like, no. And then he does, like, he does needle her again and was like, oh, geez, I'm surprised your Nana never taught you that. But he tells her that she can actually spell food and drink with a truth spell. And whoever eats or drinks the food or drink has to tell the truth. And then so I feel like I need to backtrack. So he says, did you know that you could spell food and drink? And she says, why in the 7 hells would I spell food? And he says, 8, because you can do that to wine. So she literally says, why in the 7 hells would I spell food? And he corrects her and says 8.
Yeah.
So going back,
which is like there was 8 journals.
So, like, we're missing something.
Yes.
So she doesn't really understand why he's telling her about spelling a truth spell on wine. And considering, like, they're enemies. But he's like, well, why don't we be friends tonight? And then he says, or lovers. Like, sort of insinuating, like, you want me to sleep with you, I will. And she's like, why? And he just says, like, in war, you have to do whatever it takes. So, like, he's insinuating they're in a war. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I'll do what I have to do to win. And so she's just like, oh, no. But then she says she wants to learn his truths by spelling his wine. But he's sort of insinuating that they would both spell their wines, that they would both tell the truth. And she doesn't really want to share her truths with him. Mm-hmm. But he then threatens her he's like, I can always just give you to my vampires for the night. So she's like, well, what the fuck? And just, fine, I'll do it. So she spells both their wines. And then I feel like she's doing a really bad job, because her first question is, do you like me? It's like, do you care enough? Like, I just feel like, why do you care? If he's your enemy, why do you care if he likes you?
If we're not gonna have a reverse harem style deal here with all the brothers, why does it matter if he likes you?
Yeah, and it just seems like a waste. Like, I understand that as long as they keep drinking the wine, like, it, you know, it's not gonna go away until they're, like, done with their conversation. But it just seems like you're trying to get intel. Why would you ask this question first? It just seems silly.
Yeah. It's a very immature
question. A very immature question. So his response is, I find you tolerable.
Again, Pride and Prejudice.
Yes. But then he also says, like, I'm not going to cry if you die. So, valid. But then she asks about the night her Nona attacked him and sent him back to hell. She was like, you seem to know her. I'm like, how do you know her? And then he gives her some, like, cryptic answer about curses and relating them to plants and how some plants sow where the seeds drop and others winds carry them away, and it was something really stupid. And she's like, that doesn't answer my question. But he's like, okay, I do know your grandmother, but I can't tell you some things because there are higher powers at play. So again, we're getting that. It's not that I won't tell you, I can't tell you. Then she asks about the curse. And he tells her it's a really old tale that not many know about. And I'm like, is it?
Yeah.
It just seems weird. Anyway, then he randomly says, he randomly puts in that Wrath will never force her to marry him. She's like, what does that have to do with anything? I didn't ask you about Wrath. And he says, no, but I thought I'd tell you anyway. But then he also says that he's not going to wait meekly in the background waiting for you to make a choice. Like, he's going to try and, like, steer you towards what he wants. Like, he's going to try and convince you. And she asks, like, why are you always trying to sow the seeds of distrust between me and Wrath? Like, he's constantly giving them information to try and pit them against each other. And he says that Wrath's temper caused something important to be taken from him. And he says, right now, I'm not motivated by envy. I don't want what he wants or what he has. I'm motivated by retribution. So he's trying to get even with Wrath because, again, something that envy loves was taken from him.
Interesting.
Then he asks if she loves Wrath. And remember, she is truth spelled, so she has to tell the truth. And she says no. And that hurts my heart. That she legit doesn't love him right now. But she does admit that she's attracted to him, but she can't trust him.
You should love him.
But then he gets weird with it. He quotes Shakespeare, like, the lady doth protest too much or something like that. And she recognizes it and says, Shakespeare, really? And he's like, you know Shakespeare? Like, how is a peasant like you so well read? And that's a curiosity. And she's like, okay, dick. Like, I can be well educated, you know, like. But he's insinuating that it is interesting that she is so well read for a peasant. And I'm like, her family owns a successful restaurant. I wouldn't have called her a peasant.
No.
But I guess she's a commoner.
Yeah.
But, so him saying it's a curiosity and how he likes to collect curiosities leads into a conversation about divine objects. So, like, the conversation is going all over the place. But he says that there's one that he wants called the Triple Moon Mirror. It is a mirror of the goddesses, and it's embedded with the Maiden Mother and Crone's magic, and it allows you to see the past, present, and the future. And he says, in order to make the mirror work, you need the Crone's Book of Spells and the Temptation Key, as well as the mirror.
Interesting.
In order to, like, access that magic to see the past, present, and future. And Emilia is getting excited because she's like, if I have the mirror and can use that magic, I don't need to marry anybody. I can just use the mirror to figure out what happened. And Emilia's like, I'm assuming you have the Crone's Book of Spells and the Temptation Key, and you just need the mirror. And Envy's like, he doesn't say yes or no, but he's like, would you like to view my curiosities? So I'm taking that as a yes. So he is currently in possession of 2 out of the 3 items required. He needs the mirror, and I'm assuming he wants her to help him. Oh my God. What if the mirror is her little handheld mirror with the brush?
Oh, yeah. That'd be too easy.
Maybe it would be, but I was like, why bother bringing up that he gave her a brush and mirror set?
Yeah. I kind of wondered, because, like, she also was like, oh, I needed this, and it appeared. I was like, oh, is the room just,
maybe the room's
magically
Yeah.
giving her
And this
things?
isn't me, like, projecting what I know of the book. I literally forget a lot of what happened, so this is a legit
fair.
theory. I have no idea if it's true or not.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
It's been, like, a year, I think, since I read these last.
Yeah.
So, it's all purged from my brain. Anyway, so that's where we're stopping this week, is with her about to go see all of his shit. And it looks like they're gonna try and, like, have an alliance, I guess.
Of some sort, yeah.
I don't like you, but we're gonna work together sort of a thing. I don't know why he wants the mirror, though. Like, why does he want to see the past, present, and future?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or
I guess just his collection?
maybe, I'm wondering, like, is he just invested in her breaking the curse?
Maybe, yeah.
But, like, is she invested in breaking? Is she even... I feel like she's not thinking about the curse at all.
No, doesn't seem like it.
So, anyway. We're stopping there.
Sweet.
So, I guess we're going to wrap it up for this week. And if you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions for us, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com, or on Instagram or Facebook at Coffee and Co-Read, and coffee.coread on TikTok.
So next week, we're going to be reading chapters 16 to 25 of Kingdom of the Cursed. So make sure to follow along. And if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the next page.